Hi friends, I hope you guys are doing great. This week I kind of wanted to just take it slow, start the video a bit different, maybe start it with a little bit of a voiceover. Could be fun. By the way, if you're new here, hi, hello. My name is Ev and I like to talk about all things knitting on this channel and sometimes spinning. But here I am just getting ready to spin one of my lovely bats. This was actually the very first time I spun directly from a bat, which was a lot of fun, a little bit of a learning curve, but I really enjoyed it. So I hope you guys can just sit back, relax, watch me spin for a little bit before we catch up. One event that happens during the month of July is the Tour de France, which is a cycling event. But if you are in the knitting world, if you are in the spinning world, I'm sure you have heard of Tour de Fleece, which is the spinning twist on that event. When us spinners take out our spinning wheels, our spindles, anything to spin some yarn and spin as much yarn as you can, or as long as they are cycling. Both events go from June 29th to July 21st, if I'm right. And this year I really wanted to take part of it, but because of my trip and WestJet and that whole ordeal, I ended up coming back on July 1st. I thought I was just gonna skip this year, but then last minute on the 4th, said, you know what, better join late than never, and at least now I can keep on spinning. I was actively working on this beautiful little spin. So I spun this on my supported spindle and then I just moved it onto a storage bobbin so I could keep spinning. So it is a fiber from Calliope Fibers. It is 10% viscose, 40% BFL, 40% alpaca, and 10% Sanjo SIlk. It's a lot of different fibers put together, and I think it is working up beautifully. So hopefully soon I can take this and put it on another storage bobbin. I already have one ready and empty. So this fiber came to me in a bat. So a bat usually shows up like this, but much bigger. So it has all your fiber rolled up, and a bat is just a way to prep the fiber to be spun up. Because these are all different strands, you put them in a drum carder and then it brushes all of the fibers to make them all point in the same direction, and then it'll mix them and blend them all together as best as possible. I absolutely really love this yarn because the silk really pops out and you get these really fun pops of colors. So I can't wait to see this plied up. My goal is to ply 2 strands together and see what ends up happening. So once that is done, I'm going to apply it on my e-spinner to go a little bit faster, but I'm also hoping to get more done on this beautiful little drop spindle that I got from Crafty Jack's boutique. I'm currently working on this lovely roving for it. This is just a mixture of 50% silk and 50% merino wool from Sanjo SIlk. And my goal for this one is to spin it as thin as possible to hopefully maybe get a 3-ply. We'll see. I think that would be really fun. So this one's going to take me a long time. And then I have my other supported spindle that I'm currently working on. Again, some Sanjo SIlk. That is this gorgeous mixture of color. This one is also 50% silk and 50% merino wool. It is just dyed. So hopefully we can get those going. I just finished spinning my very first bat for the Tour de Fleece, and this is what I am left with. It is a beautiful single ply. This is 2.5 ounces. It is 71 grams, all on one spindle. This looks insane. I don't think I've never spun this much yarn on a supported spindle before. And now today what I'm gonna do is actually put it on my little storage bobbin. I have one empty and ready to go. I'm expecting this yarn to be a little bit thicker, simply because if you look, you can kind of see some of the silk or some of the colors kind of create thicker little blobs. So I'm expecting this to be a very fun, creative yarn. How I kind of put it on a storage bobbin. I kind of just put the spindle like this, and then I just unravel it off by hand onto my bobbin. I saw online that you can get a, where's the end? Okay, wait, I need to find the end. I saw online that you can have like a winder, an electric winder. I don't have one. Oh no, where's the end? Oh, I got it. Okay, so I found the end. Now this is gonna take some time. This might be the craziest spin I've ever done. All these colors are so exciting. I ended up plying both strands together, and I think in the end, one of them ended up only being about this much longer than the other one. So at least my spin was the same length. They weren't 100% even, but that was expected. And now the fun part is to actually put it on my niddy noddy. Now I do have a mini niddy noddy, so I think one wrap is a yard or 36 inches. This is quite honestly the funnest part of the whole spinning process, when you successfully get it on your niddy noddy. So Tour de Fleece is finally done, and I mean, it's been done for probably like 2-3 weeks. I just haven't had the time to sit down with you guys and kind of go over everything that was spun up and just kind of talk about the yarns that I was able to create. So I have my bins with all of my spindles and all of my spun, but first we're just going to start off with the actual finished yarn. And so the first one is one that you saw me finish in the video, and it is actually this one. For this one, I decided to use my supported spindle. This was the very first time I was using this spindle. This was a spindle I purchased online from Top of the Whirl, and honestly, it works really, really great. And it kind of introduced me to the little metal tip head at the bottom of the spindle. I think from now on, if I get us another supported spindle, I'm gonna go with this, and we'll discuss a little bit about that, why, later on. So the wraps per inch is what determines the weight of the yarn. So this has been washed and dried. So it's just been sitting for a couple of weeks now on the side. So I thought it would be a lot of fun together to figure out what the wraps per inch is, and then if I was successful in my consistent wrap angle. And this was, I have the tag. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it before, but just to reminder, it is 10% viscose, 40% BFL wool, 40% alpaca, and 10% pulled sari silk. Now, I don't know what the difference is between regular sari silk and pulled. So if you know, let me know in the comment section down below. So because the Batt originally had kind of thicker clumps of color, the yarn is a little bit uneven. Also, this being my first time spinning on a supported spindle, this yarn is a little bit uneven, but it's not consistent. So right now, if I take a couple measurements, the yarn right now seems to be hitting at about a 10 or an 11 wraps per inch, which is typically 11 is a DK, worsted is 9 wraps per inch. So this is probably in between a DK and a worsted yarn, which is really fun. I did want it to have a little bit of a thicker spin. So I have in the end 320 yards of DK worsted slash. Now this is where we see if the yarn is balanced. The wrap guide indicates how over twisted or under twisted your yarn is. That helps in the knitting process and just basically indicates if your yarn is balanced or not. My yarn currently is sitting in between mainly 45, but also leaning into the 60, but not at 60. Ideally, I know that a balanced yarn should be at 30. I think that is what is recommended, but you can still knit with your yarn being a little bit more plied or underplied. It'll just give you a different kind of fiber. And I think that the more plies you have in your yarn and the more it is twisted, the more twists will mean it's more like a rope, but the more plies you have in it and the more twist you have in it, the less, like the more structured and strong it is, the less kind of felting will happen. Whereas if it's more just like a rolag or just like, what is the plotter loopy? If it's like plotter loopy where it's just like one loosely spun, I forget what that word is called, that can lead to plying, but also more breaking in the yarn as you knit with it. So yeah. So then the second spin I was able to finish is this beautiful merino silk. This is yarn from Sanjo SIlk, and honestly, this spun up super great. I did this one again on the supported spindle because these spindles were new. I just really wanted to test them out and get a run for my money. This one was done on a different supported spindle. This one was kind of done on this kind of pine cone-ish spindle. Now this one was the second supported spindle that I purchased, and this one doesn't have a metal tip. So the tip, by spinning this particular spin, kind of it's not as pointy anymore. So this kind of made me realize that the wood your spindle is made of is very important. I didn't know this. I didn't think about it when purchasing this one. I'm not even entirely sure. Like, the spindle is beautiful and they had many different options. I myself didn't know, and I was just really excited and just hit buy, and yeah. So apparently when it bludgeons, when it's not as pointy anymore, the friction doesn't really affect it all that much, how it spins. It affects it like a little fraction of a little smidge. I think it's more like aesthetic. At least for now, I don't really notice a difference in the spin, but honestly, this one spins super well, and I bought it off Etsy, so I'm going to link the Etsy shop down below. But yeah, so this is the spindle that I used for this spin. So I seem to have misplaced one of my mini skeins because I'm supposed to have a third one, because again, these each are 100 yards. I managed to spin up a little bit less because I only had 150-gram bag, and this one ended up being 230 yards. It is 50% merino and 50% silk, and it is their pencil top roving, and it is dyed by Sanjo SIlk. So this is what the spin looks like, and this is just beautiful. Now I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with this one or with the other one. So this one ended up being about 16 to 18 wraps per inch. Now 16 to 18 wraps is a lot smaller. Yeah, so this one ends up being about a light fingering weight. Some parts are a little bit more chunky, so some parts probably are fingering, and it has a 35 degree angle, so it's a little bit more balanced than the first one. I think it's just because of the fact that it was silk and merino. It was a lot more slippery, a lot more easier to kind of get together. Silk is also very sticky, so it sticks well together when you work with it. So plying it together allowed me to have a little bit more, I don't know, some people don't like silk because it is sticky, but I kind of do. I find it really, really pretty, and it adds a really nice shine to the yarn. So yeah, this was my second spin. So those were the only 2 spins that I managed to finish. So that equals about 550 yards spun up during Tour de Fleece. Now for this one, I did start it before. So I had a bat almost halfway, almost done. So that would mean, let's just remove 100 yards just to be, that might be too generous. But we're just gonna remove 100 yards. So basically that was 450 yards spun and plied during Tour de Fleece. Not too bad. I also ended up spinning a little bit. So I think I had mentioned this one before. I didn't manage to spin that much of this fiber. Now this is again by Sanjo SIlk. For this one, I decided to use my drop spindle. This is my least favorite out of all my spindles. I mean, it's still a good one and it works really well. I just personally am not a drop spindle girl. So I ended up putting a bit of my spin already on a bobbin because I lent it to a friend during Tour de Fleece and I wanted her to try spinning. So I lent it to her and my Turkish spindle. So I couldn't really spin on these all that much, but at the same time I was still working on the other ones. So it's not like I completely stopped spinning. This is about all that I managed from this fiber. Not that much. Then the Turkish spindle. Now this is my go-to. This is my best friend. For this one, I spun kind of a lot. Now I did start it before, I think I started it in the spring. So this one, it has been an ongoing project, but because I am spinning it so thin, it is taking me forever. My goal for this one is to ply all 3 together. So I'm gonna be leaving this bobbin alone, making this one as big as this one, and then getting a 3rd bobbin going. That is my goal. But right now, this is what the fiber looks like. So this one is from Fibre Goddess. It is baby camel and silk mixed together. Now I don't necessarily remember the exact combination, so I'm just gonna list it. But Fibre Goddess is an amazing fiber supplier from Alberta, and I first discovered them at Knit City. I bought a couple of their braids. Now I think this is my 3rd or 4th braid from them that I'm spinning since I started spinning. Ignore the blue, that was just the leader to start the spin. But now I don't even need a leader. I can just spin without it. One of my favorite things about the Turkish spindle, now I know that my spindle isn't full, but I don't like to get it too full. I like to remove it and then keep spinning because when it gets too full, it gets a little sore on my wrists and I just want to be careful. So one of my favorite things about the Turkish spindle is that you can just remove parts. You are left with a cute little ball. Now this little ball is called a turtle, and technically you could find the outer thread and the center thread and ply them together and use it as your little, either use it as a yarn cake to knit up directly or ply the 2 together and then have a 2-plied yarn. And you can ply it directly back onto your Turkish spindle, just spinning the opposite direction that you had originally spun your yarn. That is why this is my favorite one. Also, it works up super quickly. You just spin it in the air. You don't need to roll it on your leg. You don't need a little bowl or a little table. So this one is just build it, spin, and that's it. Now, I thought it would be kind of fun to weigh my in-progress skeins and also weigh the skeins so that we could figure out exactly how many grams I spun up. So that's 190 grams. 190. I should probably write this down. Do I have a pen? So the grand total is 227 grams of hand spun fiber on Turkish drop and supported spindle, mainly supported spindle. Since Tour de Fleece is over, Fibre Goddess also was hosting a contest during Tour de Fleece, and you could win either Rolags, a bat, or it was a box with, I think it was braids and Rolags or braids and bats. I was lucky enough to be one of the winners of one of these gifts, and what I got is a cute little bat. Honestly, this looks like cotton candy. She was so kind to ship it to me super quickly after the Tour de Fleece. So this is what it is. It is 50% merino, 50% silk, and 80 grams total. It is like a little cotton candy with little blues and pinks and orange. It's just such a light, fluffy fiber, and the color is just so delicate. So I thought maybe what I could do right now is open it. Okay, so this is a lot more colorful than it looked on the outside. But this is what the Batt looks like. Like, you know, when the sun is setting, that's what this is giving off. We're just gonna break off a piece and start off with this. For this one, we're just gonna start off with a supported spindle and a little bowl. Apparently Batts work better with a supported spindle. So I'm just gonna break you down a little bit further. And here. So for supported spindles, ideally what you want to do is have your main cop here that you build up and keep nice, compact, and really, really tight to help the spin and not kind of unbalance the spindle. And then at the top, you can build a temporary cop where you just spin it whatever, and then you take that, do the butterfly method of removing yarn from a spindle, and then you can just properly place it down here. So it's a little bit faster, I find, on a supported spindle. You do need a bowl and a table, so that's just one of the disadvantages of a supported spindle.